And it's time for Cowboy Up With Tex. Yep, right here on Hot News Talk Radio, 1240 AM, the only place in Hamilton County, Bradley County, Secaucus County, even Marion County that you will get not just Cowboy Up With Tex, but other shows such as Sean Hannity, Digital Drive with Russell, and Nuganomics with David Tullis. Well, our commander-in-chief, our community organizer in charge, was forced to make a decision today. After numerous days, President Obama finally ordered the flags of the federal government to be flown at half-staff for the soldiers that were killed here in Chattanooga last week. Even the governors of Tennessee, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Arkansas, and Massachusetts led the way in ordering their states' flags to be flown at half-staff to honor these men. Finally, after waiting, John Boehner and Mitch McConnell ordered the flags at the U.S. Capitol to be flown at half-staff also. Well, finally, after that, this afternoon, President Obama finally, facing widespread criticism, ordered the U.S. flags atop the White House and across the nation at federal institutions to be flown at half-staff. You know, of course, the main question that a lot of people, such as Mayor Sal Panto in Pennsylvania, was asking, why did he wait? Our men were gunned down on our home soil. Many people were wondering, as the days ticked by, where was Obama? Well, first off, Obama's not a military guy. He doesn't like the military. So, you know, to him, it was probably really no big deal that these guys lost their lives. He was probably more upset that the Muslim that killed him lost his life. So again, we have to ask, well, where was Obama? Well, of course, he made a big PR stunt out of going to a federal prison. The first U.S. president to visit a federal prison. In a lot of people's estimations, he needs to be the first U.S. president to actually be in a federal prison. But it showed him being escorted around. And this was, of course, just a couple of days after he actually commuted the sentences of over 40 felons to release them from prison. They were all drug dealers. And he said, well, you know, they made some bad choices. You know, they were doing some of the same things that I did. Wait a minute. So when he was talking about the choices that he had made being similar to the choices they made, when he talks about doing drugs as a teenager, and we just have to assume it stopped then, he's admitting to the country that he's a felon who just never got caught. Well, here lately, there has been a bipartisan push to reduce the number of low-level drug offenders in prison, and it has been gaining momentum in Congress. Well, of course, it's been gaining momentum in Congress because as a nation, we've become much more drug tolerant. Why are they more drug tolerant? Well, because the people in the 70s and the 80s who were taking drugs as kids, they're all growing up. They saw nothing wrong with it. They've raised their kids to be the same way. It's almost impossible for a young person these days to grow up and not be exposed to drugs of one sort or the other, especially those that are in large cities. I graduated back in 1974, and I was approached. I turned them down. But, even there in 1974, they were approaching people. Well, that's just the way it's going. We had the so-called war on drugs, and it's been about as effective as our so-called war on terror, our war on poverty. The government always comes up with all these great wars that we never win. And right now, the war on drugs is one of the worst. The government doesn't really even approach the war on drugs in a fashion that would guarantee something being positively done about it. It needs to be approached in two different ways. And I will say, this bill that's being proposed in Congress right now, at least sort of goes one direction towards one of the two legs that needs to be stood on for the war on drugs. There are people in this world that have personalities, or whatever you want to call it, that are addictive. If it wasn't drugs, it's cigarettes. If it's not cigarettes, it's alcohol. If it's not one thing, it's another thing. There's some people that just always need a crutch. Well, the thing to do is to not tell them, well, here's a crutch you can use. Maybe we need to get to the point of finding out why they needed a crutch. A lot of people are saying right now that this shooter here in Chattanooga, well, he was depressed and he was on drugs and alcohol and he's a Muslim and they're not supposed to do any of that. Did his family try to help him? Well, their idea of helping him was to send him to Jordan. Yeah, that was a big help, wasn't it? There again, what do we do with these people that have drug problems? We lock them up, but we don't really treat them. The government has never, the federal government, nationwide, has never had a real, honest-to-God policy of treating people who have a drug problem. Other nations have been doing this. Not legalizing it, but trying to get to the root problem of why they felt they needed it in the first place. What was the second leg of being able to win the war on drugs? Cutting off the supply. Well, they've not only not stopped the drugs at the border, they've actually opened the border up for even more drugs to be brought through. Whose bright idea was that? Well, for the most part, it was the Democrats, but you've got a fair amount of Republicans who have been right there going, now don't do that. We don't think that's a good thing to do. But they didn't really stand up and do anything. Some people say that there's elements in the government that don't believe in borders. Well, if that's true, we're the only nation on the planet that believes that. Every other nation believes in borders and enforces their borders. We need to secure our borders, not just because of the drugs, not just because of the possibility of militants coming across the border who want to harm our country, and not just because of the illegal aliens who are bringing all sorts of diseases to our country, but All of these and more. We need a handle on our own borders. If we were to stop the drugs at the border and we were to treat the people in a humane manner who need the help, we wouldn't be having the problems that we're having. But the government is the very ones who should be doing this. They're the ones that aren't. And you got to wonder why. I mean, right now, we have literally thousands of prisoners serving long terms because of a disparity in the nation's cocaine laws in particular, where many African Americans who don't have jobs, why? Because we've got illegal aliens coming across the border and taking the very jobs that they could have gotten. They get depressed. They turn to drugs because selling drugs is, for a lot of them, the only way they can get money. And then they made the rules for those particular drugs twice as onerous. But of course, did Obama talk anything about this? About what really needs to be done? His basic thing is, well, if they're low level or if they're nonviolent, we need to just release them. No, we don't need to just release them. We need to work out a system where, first off, okay, kind of digressing for a second. If y'all been listening to the show, y'all know that I actually worked for the Texas prison system for 7 years back in the 80s. And one of the things that they did was they had different ways that inmates could accrue good time. They could volunteer to take Alcohol Anonymous classes and get good time for that. They could volunteer to go to churches. You know, their choice of church. Nobody was telling them that they had to go to this church or that church, or that they even had to go. It was strictly voluntary. But if they went to church services and actually participated, they got good credit. Also, if they went to school and earned their high school diploma, it wasn't a GED. It was an actual high school diploma that they could earn in prison. And they even had college classes that they could take. If they went to school, they earned good time. And if they went to Narcotics Anonymous, they could earn good time. But it was all strictly voluntary. Well, if they're in jail for a crime involving drugs, even if it's just buying it, they need to be in some sort of drug rehabilitation class and make them go. It's that simple. They're already in prison. This is part of their sentence, to make them see what drugs do to people, to see what drugs do to them, and to teach them how to not do drugs. And then when they get out, if they get out on good time, they're what's called on parole. If they're on parole and they did drug offenses, they have to not just, oh, we'll do a surprise drug test, just whenever we think about it. No, they have to do a drug test once a week, once a month, but they have to have mandatory drug tests to make sure that they're not falling behind. And if they do test positive, perhaps instead of sending them back to prison, maybe they could be sent to like a halfway house or something like this where they get treatment. But under their proposals, the inmates just get to go right back out and start the cycle all over again. And that's not what we need. That's not what our nation needs. And it's especially not what these men that are currently in prison need. They talk about the United States has the largest criminal population in the world. Well, see, that's the thing about freedom, true freedom. You have the ability to make choices. You can choose good, you can choose bad. If you choose bad, you have to pay the consequences. And we do have quite a few people, for whatever reason, that choose bad. The problems with drug addiction in this country are many. But the number one problem with drug addiction problems in this country is not the gang warfare that we see taking place between like the Bloods and the Crips and all these other different gangs. The number one problem we have is that it has turned the police departments against the people. They can come up, they can take your money. No proof that you're doing anything wrong with it. They just have to, well, we think you might have been going to do something drug related with it. So we're just going to stop you from doing that. And we're just going to do an asset forfeiture and take all your money. They break laws themselves, never held to account for it, like the people that, on the other side that, get held to account for it. The police officers themselves break laws, violating people's constitutional rights because it's a war out there. We got to do what we got to do to be able to win that war. But the problem is they're not winning the war. What they're doing is they're so disrupting the citizenry that a lot of them are actually starting to fight back now. And that's not good for the police. It's not good for the citizens. It's not good for the country. I don't know that we need to decriminalize drugs the way a lot of countries have done. Because you see a lot of the countries that actually decriminalized drugs tried their little experiment, which somehow the liberals never quite learn. Those experiments almost always go wrong, and a lot of those countries are now starting to recriminalize drugs because making the drugs available does not stop people from using them. And if you've got a stoned population, it's not good for your country. They just had a thing today talking about how that more and more people are failing drug tests given by work sites nationwide. Well, there again, if you're in construction, do you really want the guy next to you who's operating heavy equipment to be stoned? I've seen what happens to that. I have personally seen somebody get killed because the people that were handling some of the equipment were too stoned to pay attention, and they killed him. Dropped a load of metal on him. Treatment, not decriminalization of drugs. Treatment and making sure the drugs aren't available. We need a true war on drugs that starts at the border. If Mexico doesn't want to help us out, that's another problem that we might have to overcome. Mexicans are more involved with the drug trade than most people know. But until we get some backbone in some of our politicians, we will never win. And if you disagree with me, give me a call. Phone number here at the station is 800-8949. That's a 423 number. We're going to fix to be going to break, but you can call after the break. You want to talk about this or anything else I talk about, bring it on. 800-8949. Because, folks, we all need to cowboy up. We all need to do what's right while we can. We'll be back after these words.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece. Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece to the perfect affordable handcrafted gem. From just $20 silver earrings to your dream elegant work of art to adorn your finger, neck, and wrist, impressing your friends and family, Arnie Guest Goldsmith will ensure that your budget is met. Planning the perfect wedding or a special event? Then let Arnie Guest Goldsmith assist you in choosing or designing the keepsake that will last you a lifetime. All of Arnie Guest Goldsmith repairs and crafting are done in-house, so you can be rest assured that it will meet or exceed your expectations. For over 30 years, Arnie Guest Goldsmith has served Chattanooga with the finest jewelry and services, meeting only the highest quality and standards. So the next time you think of jewelry, custom design, remounting, appraisals, or repairs, remember Arnie Guest Goldsmith. And please visit Arnie Guest Goldsmith at 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. That's 5090 Adams Road, Hickson. Call 875-2390. That's 875-2390. Or go to jewelryfromscratch.com. That's all one word, jewelryfromscratch.com. Jewelryfromscratch.com. Arnie Guest Goldsmith of Chattanooga.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next to Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life. Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off. We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
And we're back with the second half of Cowboy Up with Tex. You know, you can get us not only here at 1240 a.m., but you can also get us at hotnewstalkradio.com, where you can find a lot more interesting features, such as our YouTube station, where you can see other programs that are on our station. You can get rebroadcasts of David Toulis, Drive Time with Russell, plus some of my old shows. Or if you miss this show right now, you can catch it later on. You know, you get home, you say, man, I wonder what else Tex had to say. Well, later tonight, you can just pull it up on your computer and finish the show. See what else I had to come up with. We've also got things on there like half off now, where you can go to the half off link and get great deals to help save you money. We've also got Hot News Talk Radio on YouTube and on Twitter. Well, I remember when President Obama was first elected into office, and he was walking around telling everybody, well, we're going to have the most transparent administration in the history of the country. Why, they were going to be open about absolutely everything. Why, they were going to submit bills to the public for 60 days before it would even get voted on. Yeah, right. They're so busy trying to hide from us what is in their bills that they have to resort to, well, we have to pass it to see what's in it. Well, now we've got another thing that's coming to a little bit of a head. It seems as though the Obama government has been failing to fulfill Freedom of Information Act requests, primarily by different news sources, because they hide everything. They hide, they lie, they prevaricate. And for years, literally years, different news organizations like the AP have been filing requests that they're not turned down. They just Twilight Zone. You never hear from them again. You know, they hope that maybe if they keep it out long enough, you'll just forget about it and go away. Well, a federal judge is lashing out at the State Department for delaying 4 years in providing responses to primarily the Associated Press, talking about Freedom of Information Acts, requesting records about former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her top staffers. Well, at a contentious hearing last week, U.S. District Court Judge Richard Leon demanded explanations on why some of these reports have received no reply for 4 years or more, finally forcing the wire service to file suit in March. I mean, you know, they've got people that this is their only job is to fulfill these Freedom of Information Acts. Somebody's not doing their job in the federal government again. Nobody ever gets held to account for these. Even Lois Lerner with the IRS. Everybody knows that she was doing crooked stuff, but well, she's just allowed to resign and go her merry way. Nobody's feet are ever held to the fire. Nobody ever goes to jail for not obeying the law and doing their job. Of course, I guess if they were actually sent to jail for not obeying the law, that would be a bad precedent to set with all of the different politicians we've got from the federal level all the way to the top. So, well, we don't want to start making them think they can send us to jail if we don't do our jobs. Well, Judge Leon said he was determined to establish what has been going on in the State Department for 4 years, dragging their feet, or, well, actually for not addressing these issues for 4 years. I want to find out what's been going on over there. I should say, what's not been going over there. You know, I kind of like this judge. He does have a sense of irony. I like that. He said the State Department, for reasons known only to itself, has been, to say the least, recalcitrant in responding. Well, the Department of Justice lawyers said the agency was prioritizing the public release of the 55,000 pages of emails in response to another judge's order requiring monthly releases of those records dealing with Hillary Clinton. Well, Leon accused the DOJ lawyers of responding with convoluted gobbledygook because they said that the State Department's processing of those emails would satisfy the AP's request for records about Clinton Deputy Chief of Staff Huma Abedin's transition to a special part-time position at State. What you just said makes no sense, the judge replied. You're failing to distinguish between documents created by the State Department independently of Hillary Clinton's emails. He then went on to point out that the Freedom of Information Act requests were filed way before Hillary's emails were even requested. And went on to say that if anything, these requests should be taken care of before the others because they were requested first. Well, of course, the problem is the governments, not just ours, but governments in general, always try to cover their tracks. If you don't know what they're doing, you can't hold them responsible. And see, that's one of the things. The great lesson from history is that each consecutive generation seems to forget that the tools of tyranny that are used outward against others will inevitably be turned inwards towards their own citizens. The laws and weapons governments devise for supposed enemies abroad will always be eventually used against the people they were mandated to protect. There is no centralized system so trustworthy, no political establishment so free of corruption that the blind faith of the citizenry is warranted. And our founding fathers knew that. If free people do not remain vigilant, they will be made slaves by their own leadership. This is the rule, not the exception. Look what happened in Germany. Look what happened in China. Look what's happening here in America. Look at our own NSA, an agency that was supposed to be watching all of the digital means of communication to find the evil people plotting to do things to the United States. Well, they're so busy now listening to us that they can't even get around to protecting us from the evil people like we saw just last week. The Chattanooga shooter had posted numerous things online that would have sent flares up to anybody. But they're so busy finding out when grandma's going to the bingo parlor and when grandpa's going to go be getting his haircuts that they don't have time to find out when the bad people are going to be shooting people. That's their job. But see, their job has morphed into more than protecting us from the bad people. Their job has morphed into protecting the government from us. And it'll be that way as long as corrupt elitists remain in positions of power. their definition of the enemy will change however it needs to include anybody and ultimately everybody. Thus, the war on terror can and will last forever. I mean, Wesley Clark, a military man, a general, was on the news just the other day talking about how anybody that's radical citizenry of the United States needs to be put into internment camps. Of course, my question is, who gets to decide who's radical and who's not? If you're breaking the law and we point that out, does that make us radical? When we point out that you are not following the Constitution, all of a sudden we're the bad people because we want you to follow the law. And the problem goes even further than that, because most of the terror groups that we're dealing with right now, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, tend to be creations of our nation's own intelligence agencies or of other agencies from allied nations. Well, here, we'll give you guns to fight them. Well, as soon as they beat them, then they start using the guns on us because they really never liked us. They just used us as a means to an end. And now all of a sudden, our very own guns are being pointed back at us. Our political leadership, both the Republicans and the Democrats, ultimately created ISIS. And now the American people, us, you and me, are expected to relinquish more of our individual liberties in the name of stopping this threat. We're having police state structures that are being built under the names of the Patriot Act, the Authorization for Use of Military Force Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Did any of them actually stop events like the Chattanooga shooting from occurring? No. Well, you think that when things like that happen, you think anybody's going to say, maybe we need to change what we're doing instead of doubling down on jumping up and down on top of everybody? No, that would make too much sense. The establishment simply claims we need more mass surveillance without warrants, tighter restrictions on individual freedoms. And, like I said, according to retired General Wesley Clark, maybe we even need internment camps designed to separate and confine disloyal Americans from the rest of the population, with people like him deciding who is disloyal. Remember, all of these programs, the Patriot Act, National Defense Authorization Act, all of these programs were started in the name of stopping ISIS. But interestingly enough, the language that is used by the political elites does not restrict their use to ISIS-related extremists. They leave a back door open so that, once again, the war on terror ends up being an ambiguous war, so ambiguous that anybody can be dragged into it if they consider you a threat. When will it get to the point that you didn't vote for us is a threat worthy of you being locked up? We're already getting to that point. The Democrats are intent on not just winning the elections, they're intent on destroying the Republican Party. And if they get enough power by breaking the law, by having open borders so that they can drag literally millions of illegal aliens into this country to vote for them, at what point will it be illegal to be a Republican or to be a Green Party or to be an independent or a constitutionalist or any other party other than the Democrat Party? That's already Obama. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to make it so that the Democrat Party is the party. Well, you know, there's a few other countries that have one party rule. You know, countries like Russia, countries like China, Cuba. Cuba only has one party. Oh, they're our friend now. Well, of course they're our friend now, because Obama sees them as a kindred spirit. Well, they've got a one-party program. We need to be friends with them. So when we're a one-party program, we can all go out and party together. Yep, the power brokers who dictate legal and political developments within our country. Is it possible that they're going to try to turn the full force of the police state machine against us, the American people, all in the name of protecting us, of course? Well, I don't need that kind of protection. Thank you very much. And neither does anyone else. You know, it's kind of funny how we see all these movies like Mockingjay and all these different movies coming out for the kids that all talk about these very issues, about an obtrusive government taking over and how the people are having to fight back. I don't even think the liberals really even understand why these resonate. They just know it makes a good story and makes them lots of money. In the face of an increasingly advanced technological control grid, liberty movement activists and freedom fighters are going to have a harder and harder time doing countermeasures or just losing everything. And every generation after us will blame us for our inaction, if they even remember us at all. I mean, think about it. You know, in Russia, or should I say in the Soviet Union, when they disappeared you, it wasn't just you that disappeared. Usually it was you, it was your families. And if there was any pictures of you, they would actually airbrush people out of pictures so that no one even remembered that they ever existed. It's hard to hold somebody up as an example when history contains absolutely no remembrance of them. Everybody worries too much about inconsequential things. They just had the Progressive Netroots Nation Conference in Arizona. And two things of note took place there. Number one, the Democrats were using this as a base to show off some of their people who were trying to run for president, although Hillary didn't show up there, but several others did. And one of them, Malloy, I think his name was, can't remember. But one of them talked about all lives matter. And people jumped up and down and yelled and screamed, "How dare you say all lives matter?" Oh, I'm sorry, Black Lives Matter. Well, okay, so let me get this straight. Black lives matter, but nobody else's do? Well, of course, if everybody else's lives don't matter, then, it makes it a little easier to, do abortions and rip up the babies and sell their parts, because those are lives, but they don't matter to the people in charge. At the same time, protesters led by a grassroots migrant justice organization called Puente, Arizona, stormed the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office headquarters in an attempt to arrest Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. They said they need to amplify progressive voices and educate, stimulate, and inspire the nation's next generation of progressive leaders. Not just leaders, the progressive leaders. And the way to do that is by breaking the law and turning a blind eye to others that break the laws that you don't agree with. And of course, that was the problem is Sheriff Arpaio has been outspoken in his beliefs on illegal immigration and criminals. So, of course, the Democrats are going to storm the streets to protest the fact that somebody would try to enforce the laws and to show solidarity with illegal immigrants. Have you heard very much about that on TV? Of course not. You really got to wonder what's going on with our country. Where are we headed? If we don't start standing up and telling people, no, it's not pro-choice, it's murder, it's abortion. If we don't start saying, no, it's not gay rights, it's homosexual rights. If we don't start taking back our language and keeping an eye on our government, they're going to take it right out from under us, and we'll never know what happened. That's why I come on this radio show, is to try to tell people what's going on, to open people's eyes. Sometimes I wonder how good a job I'm doing. Because ultimately, I cannot do this by myself. It's going to take every single person listening to this station to stand up and take our country back. That's why I exhort people to call your officials, to call anybody that receives a vote, whether you voted for them or not. They cannot represent us if we don't tell them what we want. Otherwise, they're just going to go off and do what they want, and America will die. It's time to cowboy up, folks. Join me tomorrow on more Cowboy Up with Tex.